The Acura MDX is a loaded ride, especially as you move up into trim levels. This one is the Type S Ultra, which has every available option. It's got 21-inch wheels, a 3-liter turbocharged engine, Nappa leather seats, and so much more. Pricing for the MDX in Canada starts at around $69,600 versus $52,500 down in the US, and that's going to go up depending on how you have the ride configured. The Type S is the more pricey option out of the bunch. In Canada, you're looking at north of $90,000 in order to get this ride before you look at different paint options and some other choices you can add inside of the vehicle. This one is in the liquid carbon metallic exterior, and I gotta say the paint choice with that wild red interior actually does look pretty sharp. Looking at the drivetrain inside of the MDX in the US, the lower two trims are going to be front-wheel drive standard, and then it's going to be all-wheel drive across the board otherwise. In Canada, our only drivetrain choice is going to be all-wheel drive, which I don't necessarily think is a bad thing. Canadian winters and front-wheel drive can be okay with a good set of winter tires, but realistically, your best bet, all-wheel drive, you are plowing through snow. One other cool thing about the MDX is that it does have the option for an air suspension system, and that can raise the vehicle up, lower it down as necessary, and it just makes the overall drive quality inside of this pretty damn good at the same time. There are a series of different wheel styles and sizes that are available, minimum 19-inch up to a 21-inch. The style here, almost blacked out with those silver highlights, it does look fairly sharp, and especially when you pair it with the Brembo brake calipers, that bright red looks so good. The front end of the MDX looks pretty wild, especially as you get into the Type S. That grille, the design of it is just, it's so different from other front ends that I've seen. You've got that grille, which has like an interesting webbed honeycomb design. And then you've got a really unique look for the lower part of the bumper. You've got gloss black highlights all over the place, LED headlamps inside of the ride with some fog lamps down low, and so much technology at the same time as well. There's a forward sensing system along with a front-facing camera. So inside of the MDX, you are going to find a full 360 cam, and the camera quality in general is actually really solid. I do really like the overall front end design, the way that it kind of tapers forward, and it's got almost like a rounded front end, which is kind of neat because of the way that Acura Canada has the plate mounted. It's kind of curved a little bit. I think it looks pretty good. Underneath the hood of the MDX, there are two different engine options that are available. So the base engine is going to be a 3.5 liter V6, which has a pretty good amount of power, but then you've got this. It's a 3-liter turbocharged engine instead. And power-wise, if you're looking for the best possible power, it's going to be this 3-liter turbocharged engine. It pushes out an impressive 355 horsepower and 354 pound-feet of torque, which is amazing. So I got to get myself back up to highway speed, and I'm going to shift myself into the sport mode. So Sport Plus, and let's go back up to highway speed, and 3, 2, and launch control. 100. I love it so much. All right, that power there is pretty good. If you want the best possible performance, the 3-liter is absolutely the way to go. But you're not going to be disappointed at the power of the 3.5 liter V6 either, because it's a naturally aspirated engine. You don't have to worry about a turbo kicking in. You put your foot down and you are flying. Underneath the hood here, it's nice and simple. There's an Acura engine cover, and then you can see some exposed bits and things like that, but you can easily check your oil and top up your fluids as necessary. The warranty inside of the Acura world is slightly different from Canada to the US. Your basic warranty is going to be 4 years, and then it's going to be 80,000 kilometers or 50,000 miles. Powertrain in Canada is 5 years versus 6 years down in the States. But realistically, if you're concerned about warranty, you can always increase it at the time of purchase if you really wanted to. Honda, Acura vehicles are known for their overall reliability, so that's not really something you should concern yourself with as long as you take care of your ride. So regular oil changes, regularly scheduled maintenance to get the best possible life out of this thing, especially if you go for something like the more powerful Type S. Take care of this ride, it will take care of you. Filling up fuel inside of the MDX is done just along the driver's side. And one nice thing is that when the car's locked, the fuel door is also locked. So you just need to unlock in order to get inside, and it is a capless system that has anti-siphon technology built in. The minimum recommended fuel inside of the ride is a 91 octane, so a premium fuel, but the minimum required fuel inside of the vehicle is just an 87 octane. So that doesn't matter if you're in the 3.5 liter V6 or this more powerful 3 liter turbocharged engine instead. And it says it right on the fuel door there. So 91 is recommended, 87 is required. So you at least have to put in an 87, so no 85 or under. And there is so much you have to consider when you decide to go for the 87 versus the 91 premium. In the 3 liter turbocharged engine, I would absolutely recommend a 91 octane, so that premium fuel instead. But having said that, I was scouring a bunch of MDX forums and looking at owners' experiences. Some owners, when they used an 87, experienced engine knocking. Others didn't. Some people love using an 89 or a 91, so it's honestly all over the place. But just go in knowing that if you get this ride, you're okay with using a regular fuel. You don't have to use a premium, but premium is recommended, especially when you look at the more powerful engine. The overall economy that you get inside of the ride is also pretty good. Highway economy I did find was fairly accurate, or even better than the manufacturer's stated amount. I did find that I'm using more fuel though when I'm doing city driving, but that's because it's the winter time. I'm making sure that I warm this vehicle up using remote start for 5 to 10 minutes before I hop inside too. So in my experience, slightly worse fuel economy in city driving during the winter time, and then on highways, interstate driving, etc., better than stated economy overall, but you get pretty good economy considering the size of this vehicle. And speaking of size, the MDX is not a big vehicle by any stretch. I'm 6 feet tall. I can clearly see over it. If you're the type of person where you're an adventurer, you do have the option for crossbars as well. So if you needed to put on a roof rack carrier, that is available as an option. Then getting inside, first row is easy enough. The second row it's equally as easy. And one nice thing is that you do have assist handles across all 4 doors. The MDX has a walk-away lock feature. So as long as it's enabled, as you walk away, it's going to lock for you. But if you want to know how to use that feature and then some other neat ones, check down in the description of this video. Side view mirrors are power folding with turn signals, and there's also a side-mounted camera. There's intelligent access too, so as long as you've got the fob on you, you can push there to lock, slide your hand in order to unlock, but look at that red! So loud! You've got a wood grain along the door with driver's seat memory, and then the controls here are going to be pretty much the same across the board. So you've got your side view mirror controls with your locks, kill off power to the rear windows, with your basic window controls, a little bit of door storage, open up the lift gate, and then these are the thermoplastic rubber trays you're going to find from the factory. Type S, but honestly I recommend getting the trays because it's so much easier to clean these down compared to carpeted mats. This is the red interior, Napa leather seats, which I mean the seats themselves are incredibly comfortable, but the look is so loud. You can adjust your seats there, so multi-way adjust. And one nice thing, so these Napa leather seats also have massage chair capabilities. Taking a peek at the steering wheel as well as the cluster screen inside of the Acura MDX. In this video, I'm going to show you everything that you need to know. So first thing is that the steering wheel inside of the ride is going to be power telescoping. So down by your left knee, you can easily adjust it this way. You've also got a power driver's seat, so you're going to set that up the way that you'd like to. You can also set up your side view mirror the way that you'd like to. And once you do, you're going to push set in either 1, 2, or 3 in order for it to remember your own personal profile. So very useful to do. Steering wheel inside the ride is also heated. So you've got your heated button along the top left-hand side. But let's dive in. I'll show you what all the different stalks and sticks and buttons mean. So stick along the left-hand side. You've got different options for your lights. You can toggle the lights off completely this way, but I recommend keeping yourself in the auto mode the majority of the time. Now, there is the option of turning on or off auto high beams inside of the infotainment system. So what happens with high beams is that in the auto mode, you can't permanently lock them out. You can flash them no problem, but if you wanted to permanently lock your high beams out, you have to be in the bottom headlamp mode instead. You then push away to turn them on, pull towards you to turn them off. But in the auto mode, it's going to be an auto high beam. So what that means is that if the vehicle recognizes high beams are needed, it's going to turn them on. If somebody's oncoming, it's going to turn them off before turning them right back on again. So it's really straightforward there, really easy to use. You've got your blinkers there. I like the small highlights here. When you go to use the blinker or even the brakes and things like that, it shows you what's actively being used. You can then also turn your fog lamps on or off this way instead. Stick along the right-hand side is going to be for your wipers. So you can adjust out to different wiper speeds. When you're in the intermittent level, you could then use the little rocker in the middle to adjust how fast or slow rain's hitting the windshield. Then you can jump up into any of the other modes instead. So you've got different options available. Along the right-hand side, there's also a stick that you can adjust out, and that's going to be for your rear wiper instead. You could push down this way in order to get that rear wiper fluid going if you'd like to, so very straightforward there. Then you can pull towards you in order to get the front wiper fluid going instead. So very straightforward to use. The MDX also has paddle shifters. So it's minus along the left-hand side with your plus along the right-hand side. Where this comes into play is if you want a little bit of extra speed in order to be able to pass somebody, you could drop down a gear or two in order to increase the RPM for you to launch forward. And then you can push plus in order to increase your gears. You can also use engine braking by hitting the minus button there instead. Now, if you've never used paddle shifters before though, and you're not sure what the heck they actually mean, or you didn't follow what I just said there, check down in the description of this video. I've put together a comprehensive video explaining how paddle shifters work, when you want to use them, etc. Then you've got so many different buttons and options. So I mentioned, you've got the option of turning on the heated steering wheel this way. There's also the option of adjusting your audio. So you can turn the power button this way, so on or off. You're just essentially turning the audio on or off. You've got a volume rocker. You can adjust it this way instead if you'd like to. There's a little roller wheel here, and that's going to give you some different options inside of the head-up display, which I'll show you in a second here, but that's going to let you adjust a few things. You can also adjust this way instead. So if you wanted to jump between all of your available presets for whatever source you're currently on, you'd have that flexibility. You've got a basic menu button here as well, and menu is going to give you some options inside of the head-up display. I'll show you that in a second. And then you've got a voice command prompt. So you'd be able to do things like change songs, radio stations, navigate using your voice. You can adjust your climate using your voice and so many other things. If your phone was hooked up, so if you're hooked up over Bluetooth or Android Auto Apple CarPlay, a short button push is going to be for your built-in factory assistant. A long button push and hold though is going to be the assistant for your phone. So if your phone was connected, you'd be able to either activate your Siri assistant for iPhones or your Google Assistant for Android devices instead. Along the right-hand side, you've got a boatload of different buttons too. So the ones on the outside and the bottom of the wheel here are going to be for the adaptive cruise control system. So the rocker wheel here is going to be for the middle screen, but otherwise it's adaptive cruise. So you can toggle the system on this way. You could then increase or decrease 1 kilometer or 1 mile per hour at a time. You can push and hold up in order to get to the nearest 0 kilometers an hour or the nearest 5 or 0 miles per hour. So let's say if you have it set at 47 kilometers an hour, push and hold up, it'll bring you to 50, 60, 70, etc. Push and hold down, it'll bring you to 40, 30. So you've got options there. You can hit the brake to cancel, you can hit there to cancel, and then you could push up in order to resume your previously set speed. There's also a distance indicator, so it's how close or far are you away from the vehicle that's in front of you. There are 4 unique levels that are available there. And then if you push and hold the gap adjustment button for 1 to 2 seconds, that's also going to put you into a traditional cruise control instead. And then there's also this one, which is a lane keeping or lane center assist. It's a really Really cool system. So the MDX does not have full hands-free driving. You do have to keep your hands on the wheel, but if you lose focus for a second with this system enabled, as long as it recognizes the lane markings, if you're going around a bend, it's going to keep you perfectly balanced in your lane, even if your hands are off the steering wheel. After about 10 seconds or so, you do get a little message inside of the screen telling you to put your hands back on the wheel, but it is a really, really cool system at the same time. But if you want to walk through like a live demonstration on how this works, check down in the description of this video instead. Then you've got options for the cluster screen with so much flexibility inside of the screen itself. So you've got the tachometer along the left-hand side, your digital speedometer, you've got what gear you're currently in. So whether that's park, reverse, drop into neutral versus drive. And then as you have different settings, so you go into your reverse, etc., you'll be able to see different things specifically inside of the infotainment system. So you've got your rear camera there with different options, your surround camera as well, so you can see your full 360 view. So pretty neat from that perspective. And back down into park, you've got your current engine temperature along with your outside temp, your current odometer, what drive mode you're currently in. So there's a selector switch down the middle in order to jump between different drive modes. And you can see here, as you jump between different modes, so the first one is a lift mode, which is literally going to increase the vehicle height if you've got the air suspension system in yours. Snow mode, which is going to play with your traction control and stability control. There's also going to be just a comfort mode, so that's going to be for the best fuel economy. Normal mode is exactly that. There's a sport mode, there's a sport plus mode, and then there's an available individual mode as well. But I like inside of the cluster screen how it tweaks out the look just a tiny little bit depending on which drive mode that you're in. I love the sport mode look though. Oh damn, that looks nice. I typically drive in comfort mode though, just to get the best possible fuel economy. From here, you can see some other systems if they're engaged, yay or nay, your current range with your fuel level there, and then you've also got your screen along the right-hand side that you can adjust using the rocker switch along the right. So your basic one is going to be your trip A versus B counter. So you can move up or down this way, and then some screens also let you go left or right using that same rocker switch. So if you wanted to, you could go left or right this way. So A versus B counter. If you wanted to reset, you're just going to push and hold in the middle there for a few seconds, and that's going to reset your trip counters instead. Inside of the infotainment system, you'd also have the option of selecting certain things for the trip counter. So as a default, it's going to be a manual reset, but you can have it set up so every time you refuel, it defaults to 0. You've also got the flexibility of setting it up so that every time you turn the ignition off and then back on again, it's going to default to 0. So useful if you're using it for a business vehicle. You've also got full map and cluster. So if you had an active route going inside of the infotainment system, it's also going to give you the flexibility of being able to see your turn-by-turn directions right inside of the cluster screen. I mean, I love that. Love that flexibility there. You can jump down into different options here, so you can see your oil life, tire pressure, your vehicle, so which wheel is getting which amount of power. So we're in the all-wheel drive version. So as you go to drive, you'll notice that one wheel might be getting a different amount of power, or typically it's going to be an axle. So either the front or back are going to be using more power. You'll get your G-force meter, your attention level. So what's going to happen is as you start driving, that's going to start off full. But if you start to veer over into another lane without signaling or other things drifting over, that counter is going to start dropping. And then eventually you're either going to get a steering wheel shake, a loud noise, or a mixture of both. And that's all set up through the infotainment system. You can toggle it off as well, so if you don't want that attention warning if it drives you crazy. But your best bet, just use your blinker. Seatbelts are available there as well, so you can see who's plugged in or not. You've also got just like a basic empty screen. So if you don't like having all the extra stuff, you've got the flexibility of just having a basic screen along the right. And then there's safety information. So you've got a few different options here. So your first one is going to be the road departure mitigation. So if you start to veer over into another lane, it's going to nudge you back into your lane. There's also going to be a collision detection and then low speed brake control. So all of these safety settings, you've got the flexibility to turn them off. I recommend keeping them on, especially this one, because if you start to back up and there's an obstacle behind you that you don't see, it can automatically brake for you. Same thing if you're pulling forward. If there's an obstacle you don't see at low speeds, it can brake for you. But if you've got these systems turned off, you do risk potentially getting into an accident. But I mean, it is nice that you've got the flexibility of toggling them off. The cross traffic alert for the front, if you're pulling out of a space and somebody's coming for the left or the right side, it can let you know of a potential collision. So these ones, I honestly just recommend keeping them all turned on. And then there are some different settings. So if you wanted to adjust out your distance, so whether you wanted to be in either miles or kilometers, you've got the flexibility of being able to easily adjust this out instead. From here, you've got the option of adjusting the gauge layout. So do you want it advanced versus more of like a classic look instead? So that one's a matter of preference. I think the advanced one, in my opinion, I think it kind of looks nicer. Audio and clock, you can also show versus hide that information. So you can see there, everything in the left gauge kind of just disappeared. So you've got that available if you don't want all the extra stuff and you wanted to make it a little bit easier for you. So you've got options here. And then you've also got a series of other options. So you can use this one in order to change some things out, but most of it is going to be viewable through the head-up display. Look at that. There we go. So you've got your turn-by-turn directions that are showing up inside of the head-up display right now. And then if we hit the menu icon there, it's going to give us different options. So you can look at your phone, AM, FM, USB. So we're essentially going through all of our different audio sources. You can customize it to show what's showing up inside of the menu. So whether that's AM, FM, Bluetooth. So if you never listen to these, so if you're never going to use Alexa, Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, you can essentially remove these things from the menu if you wanted to. And then as you hit the back button, you could also show different menu content, which we've already seen. So you've got different options. You can kind of customize this one a tiny little bit, not much, but a little bit. And just down by your left knee, you've got a series of different switches that are available. So if your MDX has the head-up display, you can move the head-up display up or down to make it easier to see. You can also increase or decrease the brightness of the head-up display. One thing that I definitely recommend you do is have maximum brightness, because the screen itself, the head-up display, is non-obtrusive, but if you wear polarized sunglasses, it's a little bit tricky to see if you don't have maximum brightness set. So maximum brightness is definitely the way to go if you actually wanted to be able to easily see the head-up display inside of the ride. This button is going to be a hot button press in order to bring up your safety settings inside of the cluster screen. This is for your front windshield wiper. You can toggle the park sensing system on or off, so that beeping that you get as you get closer to obstacles. This is going to be for traction control, so traction on or off. And then you can increase or decrease the brightness of the cluster screen as well. You've got the electronic parking brake, so you're going to push in order to turn it on. You're going to then hit the brake and pull away in order to turn it off. With the seat as far down as it's going to go here, up overhead, I've got 3.5 almost 4 inches of headspace. I'm 6 feet tall for reference. So if you're taller than that, 6'4", 6'5"-ish, you'll probably comfortably be able to sit inside of this ride. But the seat is comfortable. Taking a peek at the infotainment system inside of the Acura MDX. This is the 2025 model. It's based off of the Google Android operating system. So the last generation did have a different operating system and a slightly different look. Unfortunately, I just started reviewing Acura vehicles, so I haven't been able to get into a 2024 model yet. But if I'm able to get into one of the last generation screens for a walkthrough, you'll find that down in the description of this video. But let's dive in and I'll walk you through the current generation version. Along the top left-hand side, you've got 3 individual icons, and these are all locked into place. So your home, back, and then your Google Assistant button, which is going to let you do things like change songs, radio stations. You can navigate using your voice, control your climate, and a bunch of other things. So these ones are stuck into place. And then you've got 3 icons along the bottom left-hand side instead. And these ones are customizable. So if you do a push and hold on any of them, it's going to then give you the flexibility of adding any of these other options in. So let's say you didn't want to have maps there. Maybe you wanted to have FM radio instead. You've got the flexibility to do it. If you want ambient light there instead, you can adjust these out, and there are 3 individual lines, or icons I should say, that you'd be able to use. Once you're done editing these icons, you can hit back in order to save those ones into place. And then you can also adjust the screen layout here. Push and hold until it becomes loose. Once it is, push and hold again, and then drag around in order to customize the layout, and you can drag these icons throughout the pages as well. So if you wanted to have AM over on this page here next to FM radio, you've got the flexibility to be able to do it. Once you've modified these ones and you're happy with the location of all the icons, you're just going to hit back to lock these into place instead. Along the right side, you've got this little quick launch tray. So you've got your current user profile, the current time, and then a series of other options too. But one nice thing is that on any of these options, you can push it in order to slide the information along the side here instead. So if you wanted to have your radio there, whatever the case may be, you've got the flexibility to do it. So let's dive in and I'll take you line by line, showing you everything you need to know. First thing is that you are Google Maps based inside of this ride. And one of the nice things here, so if you haven't used Google Maps before, there we go, fresh install, which is useful. But Google Maps pinch to zoom capability is there, drag around with your finger. You can easily recenter it onto yourself if you'd like to. You can search for addresses this way, so if you wanted to look for either an address, if you wanted to search by GPS coordinates, look for point of interest icons, you can do that. You can hit here to show traffic, if you prefer the satellite terrain mode instead. There are route options, so if you wanted to avoid highways, toll roads, and ferries, you could. You could also download offline maps. And the benefit of downloading these maps is that if the vehicle doesn't have an active data connection, you'd still be able to use maps. It wouldn't work as fast, but you could at least download the data there instead if you know you're traveling somewhere where you're not going to have a connection level to the vehicle's built-in modem. So that's extremely useful. Back again, you can hit this in order to mute out all notifications. You can just get alerts. So if you're coming to an upcoming turn, it can let you know. And then you can hit here in order to get all notifications. You can adjust your heading type this way instead. So north, up, perspective views, etc. for whatever one you'd like. Easily searching for addresses. So again, I mentioned you can search by GPS coordinates, latitude first, longitude second. You can search for point of interest icons instead if you'd like to. There we go, let's choose one that's a little bit further away. So let's go for this one here. And you can see we've got our main route in order to get there. If your phone was connected, you'd be able to call, you can start, or see if there are other routes that are available. So we've got 3 different ways that we can get to the end destination. Choose whichever one you'd like. Route options are available, so if you wanted to avoid certain things, once you're happy with your route choice, you're just going to hit start, and that's going to bring you to your end destination. You could cancel out your route. You could hit this icon again to see what different route options were available. You could also search for additional options. So let's say if you wanted to stop at a gas station before you stop to get a coffee, you can see which options are there along the way. So let's add in Shell station here. So we've got that as our next destination, or as our first, I should say. We're going to add that in as a stop now. And there we go. Going to confirm, and you can see there, we've got our full route. And then just recenter. You can then hit the X icon in order to remove the next stop that we added in, or you can completely exit navigation. Looking at search, you can see the addresses that we've previously searched for. So Google Maps is great. One other great thing is that you can hit this little icon and then you can sign into your Google account. So if you've been using Google Maps on your phone, you can sign in, and any addresses that you've searched for on your phone would then show up inside of the infotainment system here too. Just really straightforward using. And I mentioned you can also use your voice if you wanted to search for different addresses instead. So that's straightforward to do. Navigate to Tim Hortons.
There's a Tim Hortons 0.3 kilometers away.
So you can see there, gives us different options in order to search. So using your voice is incredibly straightforward. But that's using factory navigation inside of the ride. And next up is adding in a phone. So if we go to the device list, as of right now, no phones are connected. So we hop back, let's connect a new device. And we're going to start off on the iPhone side of things. So inside of your settings, you're going to go Bluetooth, looking for Acura MDX to show up. Pin numbers match up, so let's go ahead and pair. And do you want to allow contacts and favorites to sync up? This is not my car, so I'm saying no to that one. So if it was yours, you could obviously say yes. And you can stop here. So we're connected over Bluetooth, so you'd be able to make phone calls and then also stream audio this way. But you've also got the flexibility to use Apple CarPlay. Now, it is wireless, but it's also backwards compatible. So if you wanted to use a USB-C cable, you could. You just have to plug yourself in inside of the armrest. But let's go ahead and use CarPlay here. Like I said, you don't have to use it if you don't want to, but you've got a lot of other options that are available when you utilize CarPlay. Look at this. Full CarPlay connectivity. So along the outside here, you've got this icon, which is going to give you a little bit of a split screen. So you can go split versus full. The icon tray here is always going to be locked into place. So if you wanted to listen to AM/FM radio while you're also going through CarPlay, you've got the flexibility to do it. You've got your current time, connection level, which map was open last, which audio application was open last, which miscellaneous application was open last, your battery, and then you've got your little icon view. So you can go icon view versus the home screen instead. Big, bright, and beautiful. There's not much flexibility from the actual look perspective. This is always going to be your map, your search bar, and then whichever audio application was last opened. Inside of your settings though, you can set it to driving focus. You can also change out the wallpaper. So if you wanted to adjust the look, you've got the flexibility to do it. So there are a few small options that you've got available for customization. And then here you've got Apple Maps, Google Maps, and Waze that are all available inside of the screen. My personal recommendation, I'm always a big fan of using Waze for a few reasons. Like as people are driving along, if they see that there's a speed trap, they're pretty good at marking that off, just so that you've got a heads up. If there's construction accidents and things like that, you can mark that stuff off yourself if you'd like to, and then back from there. But regardless of which map application that you use, whether it's Google Maps, Apple Maps, or Waze, there's no pinch to zoom capabilities on the Apple CarPlay side of things. That's the only downside. And there's also no video playback support inside of CarPlay yet. Now, when you're connected through CarPlay, you can also do a long button push and hold on the voice command prompt, and that's going to bring up your Siri assistant, so the one in your phone. If you do a short button push, that's going to be the built-in assistant for the vehicle. So short button push is for the vehicle assistant, long button push and hold is for your phone assistant instead. You've also got the flexibility of customizing the icon layout here if you're not a fan of the layout. What you're going to do, go into your settings, you're going to go general, and then CarPlay, find your vehicle. You can forget it, customize, or turn CarPlay off. But if you can't even get to these steps because CarPlay is not connecting for you, check down in the description of this video. I've put together a walkthrough video on how to connect CarPlay if it's giving you problems. But you can customize the layout here. So let's say if you wanted to have your podcasts along the very top and you're a bigger fan of using Waze, you can bring those to the top instead. Anything with a minus next to it, you can remove it from the vehicle. So you've got the flexibility of customizing this a little bit. It saves it at the very bottom of the screen, so you could add it back in if you want to. And let's say if you played around with the layout of these too much, you're not a fan of what you've done, along the top right side of your phone, there's a reset button. So you're going to hit reset, reset, and that's going to bring you back to the factory default layout screen instead. Now, if you hop back to the home screen here, and shoot across into your general settings, connections, and then devices. So you've got the iPhone that we've connected to. You could then hit this. So what we're doing is we're disconnecting from CarPlay and we're reconnecting strictly over Bluetooth instead. So if you just wanted to be hooked up over Bluetooth, you'd have the flexibility to do it. But like I was saying, CarPlay gives you so many different options. It's just going to come down to a matter of personal preference. You could then connect through. You've got Bluetooth options, you can disconnect from the device as well. So it's that straightforward using Apple devices inside of the MDX. Setting up an Android device is the exact same process. So on this screen, all you're going to do, just connect new device, and we're looking for MDX inside of the Android phone as well. So we're just going to wait for MDX to pop up. There we go. And let's connect through. Pin numbers match up, so we're going to hit OK there. Allow access to contacts and messages. This is not my car, so I'm saying no to that one. And similar to the iPhone side of things, we've also got Android Auto. It is backwards compatible again, so you can use a USB Type-C cable if you wanted to, but let's go ahead and enable Android Auto. So it's going to take a second here in order to connect. And a few seconds in, we are fully connected to Android Auto. So a different kind of setup compared to Apple CarPlay, but it works essentially the exact same way. So this is an Android device. You've got Google Maps as a default there, so pinch to zoom. All of the same map application, or map options, I should say, is what we found inside of the factory option. So the MDX screen is Google-based, so it's got Google Maps, but you can also use it through Android Auto instead if you want to, and it works the exact same way. So you've got your options for searching for addresses, GPS coordinates, things like that, point of interest icons. You can look at your traffic, guidance volumes, route options, and things like that. Change your perspective. You can hit this icon to get to a split screen. Hit it again to get to the icon view. If you wanted full screen maps, just hit the map application and you've got full screen instead. You've got your Google Assistant that way. Again, you can do a short button push in order to get the assistant for the vehicle, or you do a long button push and hold instead, and that's going to be for your phone assistant. So that's the same whether you're in Google or iOS devices. From here, hitting this icon brings you up to this little screen where I've got Waze installed. But if you've got Waze installed on your Android device and it's not actually showing up here, check down in the description of this video. I've put together a little walkthrough on how you can actually set this up. But it's straightforward using it. You've got your basics along the bottom here, so a quick launch tray along with your current time, your battery level, and your connection level as well. And you can also customize the layout here a tiny little bit. So inside of your phone, what you're going to do is you're going to search for Android Auto. You're going to go Android Auto settings. And once you click through, you've got a ton of options. But what we're looking for is customize launcher. So you're going to go customize launcher, and you can see all of the available icons here. You could just do a drag and drop in order to customize it. So if you wanted to change out the overall layout, you've got the flexibility to do it. Now, the one thing though is that it's not dynamic the same way it was on the iPhone side of things. So it's not just going to add all of these icons in and readjust them. So in order for the changes that you've made here to come into effect, what you need to do, go back home, go to your general settings, your connections, device connections, you're going to disconnect from Android Auto, you're going to reconnect to Android Auto, and when this launches through, icon view, you can see here the changes that we've made have now come into effect. So not dynamic, but easy enough to adjust out if you want. You can hit back home there instead, and the quick launch tray along the outside, we have it set for Apple CarPlay. But if you're using Android devices, you then have the flexibility of setting up any of these other icons, including having Android Auto there instead. So if you wanted to replace it, you'd have the flexibility to do it. You can hop back into your phone this way in order to jump back into just your basic phone. Or if we go back here, you can click through Android Auto to hop back into the screen again. If you hop back home now, you can then go into your vehicle settings, connections, device connections, and you've got both phones that have been connected. So if you wanted to, you can disconnect. So you can either be hooked up to Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, not both, but you can kind of do a mix here, which is kind of nice. So if you've got both phones that are in the vehicle, you can see who gets connection there. And then you can also do connection priority. So if you're driving with multiple phones inside the vehicle, who's it going to try to connect to first? So I know that's a little bit of info, but that's how you set up Android and iPhone devices inside of the MDX. If you wanted to delete phones from the vehicle, all you're going to do is click through to whichever device, and you're just going to go delete, delete, and delete. And same idea, let's do that for the Galaxy as well. So delete, and 3, 2, 1. We've now deleted both phones from the vehicle. If you hop into your options now, you can toggle Bluetooth off completely. You can also change the vehicle name. So if you don't want it to be Acura MDX, you wanted it to be Sam's MDX or Bob's MDX or whatever the case may be, you've got the flexibility of changing out the vehicle name there instead. And then you can either go normal versus that wide view instead. So we saw the wide view with that full screen, but the normal view would mean that we've got this locked into place. So you've got the flexibility of changing out that screen size instead. But that's hooking up a phone inside of the ride, so Android and iPhone devices. Next up is going to be using the radio, so AM, FM, whatever the case may be. You can hit this icon along the very top to change to all of your available sources, and there are so many. So AM, FM, USB, Bluetooth, and then so many other options here as well. On top of that, you can also use the pad along the left-hand side of the steering wheel in order to change out your available source as well. So if we are looking at the head-up display here, you can see as we navigate through, we can change it out to AM, FM, USB, Apple CarPlay if Android Auto is in there as well. So you've got the flexibility of adjusting it out, just using the rocker switch this way instead. But if you're just listening to AM or FM, your best bet if you wanted to change stations is just use the voice command prompt along the steering wheel and change stations that way. But you can also easily add in different presets. So if we, 97.7 FM.
Sure, playing 97.7 FM.
So we're tuning to a station there. After it tunes to whatever station, if you wanted to save it, you just do a push and hold, and that's going to either give you the flexibility to remove or we can replace instead. If we were on, let's go back and let's look at a station list instead. So you've got all of the available stations based off of your geographic area. If we go to another station, you can overwrite any of these other stations if you'd like, or push and hold in order to save it as a new station instead. You could look at your station list jump, or you can refresh. So if you're new to an area, you're not sure what stations are available, you can hit the refresh option there. You can tune to a station this way. So if you wanted to type in a station, you've got the flexibility to do it. and then just button push and hold again in order to remove or replace, and then back in to lock that into place. But you've got a bunch of different options that are available here. You can also scan. So if you wanted to scan to different stations, you've got the flexibility to do it. AM is going to give you the exact same options too. So you've got all of your different presets, and it's nice because the presets are broken up based off of whether you're in AM or FM. You've got Alexa, podcasts, and then news that's available too. USB is strictly going to be for a USB device, so USB Type C, but you've got the flexibility of listening to USB audio as well if you'd like to. It's straightforward. Alexa's available. You have to be signed in to use it. You've got your Google Assistant. You can use that way. You can push the button there. You can say, "Hey Google," in order to activate it that way instead. Vehicle settings, and there are so many different options. You can do a little change view here if you wanted to tweak out the way that this is laid out. So it's a matter of preference. It's the exact same thing. It's just going to be a different layout. There's a menu icon here in order to default everything back to the factory options, or you can even change out the body color. So if you wanted it to match your Acura, you'd have the flexibility to do that. It's kind of a nice little thing that you can do here. So you've got the option there of adjusting this out. And let's dive into all of the available options, starting off with the driver assistance systems. Starting off with the forward collision warning. So if there's potentially going to be an accident, the vehicle can let you know, and it's how close or far are you away from the vehicle before you get that notification. Do you want to get a warning of a potential collision inside of your head-up display? There's adaptive cruise control with your cornering speed. So if the vehicle recognizes that you're going around a bend, it can automatically slow you down if you've got the adaptive cruise control system turned on. Let's see, I'm just trying to think of other ones. Active lane change assist is kind of neat. So if you're on the highway and the vehicle allows it, you can hit the turn stalk to go left or right. It's going to check to see if there's anybody next to you, and then it can automatically change lanes for you. So you do technically have to have your hands on the steering wheel, but it's kind of neat that it can change lanes for you by itself, but you can also toggle that off if you don't want it. And then these are just basics. So your driver attention monitor. So if you start to veer over too many times without signaling, either nothing's going to happen, or you're going to get a tactile alert, so a little bit of a steering wheel shake, and then you'll also get an audible alert as well. So just basic driving attention systems. Seating position at entry exit's kind of a neat one. So what that one's going to do with it turned on, when you go to turn the vehicle off or on, what it's going to do is push the steering wheel in and back the seat up for you to be able to get in and out of the vehicle a little bit easier. So you can do that for the seat and then for the steering wheel. So do you want that for both positions, yay or nay? With your power tailgate, do you want to be able to use the outside handle there in order to open up? And then hands-free is a kick function in order for you to be able to open it up instead. There are different suspension options inside the vehicle. So if your vehicle has it available, you'll have park height available with leveling control. So the vehicle can raise or lower depending on your driving scenario. Basic maintenance information, so you can see your oil life, engine oil. You can reset the items if you're doing those oil changes yourself. With meter setups, you can change out when trip A or B are going to reset. So you can have it so that you have to manually reset your counters. You can have it when you turn your ignition off, so every time you restart the vehicle, or when you're fully refueled. What I'd recommend is that if you're using your Acura as a business vehicle, change either trip A or trip B to your ignition off instead. And the big benefit there is you turn the vehicle off, back on again, and then you'll know what distance you've traveled. Again, easy for your basic logs if that's the case. And the other ones here, you've got your rear seat reminders. So when you go to turn the vehicle off, it's going to remind you to check the back seats just to make sure you haven't forgotten somebody back there. And then your distance units as well. So you want to be in either miles or kilometers instead. Because we've got this big, beautiful digital cluster screen, as we change out, it's going to change it out for everything. So your current speed, along with your adaptive cruise control speed, if you have that set up, and then your current mileage along the very bottom. So your overall range there instead. Key access setup. When you go to unlock using the key fob, is it just the driver's door that becomes unlocked, or is it all doors instead? Let's see, key access light flash. When you go to lock the vehicle, do you get lights? Do you get beeps? Do you want to toggle remote start off so you can't use it on the fob whatsoever? And then lockout prevention. So if the key fob is locked inside the vehicle, you can't accidentally lock it inside instead. There's door setup, so when do you want the doors to automatically lock or unlock? So very useful here from a basic safety perspective. Do you just never want them to unlock? Do you want the doors to automatically unlock when you turn the ignition off, etc.? There's also walk-away auto lock. So really useful here because if you've forgotten to lock the vehicle and you start walking away, it's going to automatically lock the door for you. Let's see. Do you want the mirrors to automatically fold in when you go to lock the vehicle? And then you can also use the key fob in order to remote control the windows. So let's hop outside and I'll show you how a bunch of these features work. In order to remote start, what you're going to do is push the lock button and then push and hold that engine hold button for a few seconds right afterwards. You're going to go lock, push and hold. There we go. See there that the start-stop has begun, so the engine is started up. In order to cancel the remote start, just push and hold that engine hold button again, and we're done. From here, you've also got your trunk release. So what you could do, push and hold there. In order to open up the lift gate, you can push to pause, push and hold again in order to close. So that's a way you can get into the trunk of the ride. But one nice thing is that the MDX also has the option for a foot activated. So as long as you've got the fob on you, you can kick in order to be able to open up. You can close there as well. And you can also set a unique height. So let's say if your garage only opens up to a certain point or you can't reach, you can manually adjust here. And then once you get it to the height you'd like, you're just going to push and hold in order to lock it into place. And then you can just button push in order to close from there. Then there's one other neat key fob trick that you can do, and that's rolling the windows down. In order to do it, you push the unlock button once and then push and hold again within a few seconds. So we're going to go 1 and then hold. You can release it to pause it part way, and then if you push and hold the unlock button again, so not only is it opening up all 4 windows, but it's also opening up the sunroof as well. I love it. All of the different options are great. I love how the remote power open option works though. Then, hopping back in, there are some individual settings available too. So you've got a series of different drive modes that are available. So if we look, we've got our dynamic selector switch here, where you've got different options here. You could jump between all of these different options. So lift versus snow, comfort, sport mode, etc. But if you push the middle button in, that's your individual setting instead. So the big benefit of that individual setting is you can choose what it does. So if we hop back into our individual option here, what do you want it to do? Do you want it to have the engine for sport mode, comfort mode? How do you want your steering and suspension to be? What do you want your gauges to look like? Do you want it to be in a sport mode, comfort mode, things like that? Having the option of setting up your individual mode to do what you'd like is also pretty useful. From here, you've got a series of general settings, so you can adjust some system options, date and time. You can set your date and time automatically, and these are grayed out because it's automatic. But if you wanted to manually set your date and time, you'd have the flexibility to do it. I just always recommend keep that one in the auto mode. Time zone, though, is automatic, but you might want to have it so that you can automatically set your time zone. A big benefit there is that if you live somewhere where you straddle a time zone and it's constantly flipping you from one to the other, you'd have the flexibility of being able to lock it into any of these options. Auto daylight savings times available there. Date and time format. Do you want to be in 12 versus 24 hour mode instead? So that military time. You can change out your language for both the center display here or for your instrument cluster. So if you wanted to have one language for the other, you'd have the flexibility of adjusting that out instead. And that's going to be region specific. There's basic about information. You can do a factory reset. So if the vehicle is being sold, or like me, it's a press unit, I'm just going to do a factory reset to get rid of all of the options that I've added in when I had the vehicle. You can tweak out some settings for your display. So do you want to adjust the brightness, the black levels, toggle the display off, back on again, reset everything back to the default. There are basic sound settings, so you can change it out for your bass, treble, heavy, etc. So you've got the flexibility. I actually kind of like the way that they've done this. So it kind of gives you an idea. But what I'd actually recommend here is play one of your favorite songs. And while you're listening to the song, adjust this out a little bit more in order to make it sound perfect for you. And once it does, bring it back and you're set to go. You can also adjust out all of the different speaker volumes here. See, audio zone, do you want it to have focus on everybody? You can also kind of do a little balance versus fade here, bring it back to center instead if you'd like to. You can have it driver focused, front focused, rear focused instead, or for the full vehicle. Speed compensated volume, as you're going faster or slower, it can automatically raise the sound for you instead. You can adjust different sound volumes too, so for your navigation, for phone calls and things like that. So if you wanted to have all of these different sounds set to something unique, you've got the flexibility to do it. For your camera, you've got a few different options to your guidelines. Do you want to have your fixed versus your dynamic guidelines? So as we go into our 360 camera there, you've got your guidelines, and then as you go to rotate, they're dynamic. So you could have it so that the dynamic ones are there, yay, nay, or you can have them fixed and placed instead. I'm a big fan of having both of them, but that's going to be a matter of preference. You can customize a few things here as well. So do you want to show the camera for a brief time after you shift from reverse into drive? And then do you want the camera to show if an obstacle is detected? So if we go back to our camera there, you've got your full 360 view. You can hit this view in order to get a slightly different look. Then you can also change things out. So if you wanted to adjust the brightness of that screen, you've got the flexibility to do it. See, front cross traffic warning is a useful one to have on. And the reason why is because if you're pulling out of a space and somebody's coming perpendicular, so from the left or the right, it can let you know of a potential collision there. Cross traffic monitor is a useful one as well. That same principle applies. Voice control. So you've got your default app, which is going to be your Google Assistant. You can sign into Alexa instead if you would rather use Alexa instead of the Google Assistant, or you can have no assistant whatsoever. When you've connected your phone over an iPhone, you can then have it listen for Hey Siri instead. But because we're in Google right now, hey Google, 94.9 FM.
All right, here's 94.9 FM.
So you can easily adjust stations out that way if you'd like to, but you've got different options available here. There's some security information, which the big one here I'd recommend maybe looking at is the profile lock for either a PIN or a password. Big benefit there is that if you've got your phone connected, there are addresses that you search for, whatever the case may be, you could then lock your screen out. So you need to enter a PIN or a password for somebody to look through those different options. And that's going to be unique to the individual profile. So if multiple people are driving the vehicle, you've got different profiles set up. You can have PINs and passwords set up for each individual person. You can see if there are security updates that are available. You can look at some basic Google settings. And then you've got a series of different advanced settings. And honestly, for most of these, I would just recommend keeping it at whatever the default is. Like unless you're an advanced Android user, I wouldn't even bother diving into these settings. Like you could look at system updates. I guess it would be the only one. So the vehicle is going to let you know if there are updates that are available. You can see what Android option you're running. And then you've also got your reset options. So let's say if CarPlay is giving you problems, it's not connecting properly, you could also do a reset for the network or reset your app preferences instead. And I think that's everything on that main screen there. You've got individual profile settings, so you can change profiles or manage. And big benefit there is that if you've got multiple people driving the vehicle, you can have it set up for individual profiles. So it's going to remember all of your presets. If you've signed into Google accounts for your maps, or whatever the case may be, it'll log it into your individual profile. If you're the only one driving, not a big deal, but you can easily manage or change profiles out from here. There's ambient lighting available inside of the ride, and you can have it adjust out based off of the dynamic mode that you're in. So the mode that we were looking at down the middle here, as you change that out, you'd also have the flexibility of having it look slightly different throughout the vehicle as you move between these different modes. It's actually kind of neat. You can also select a different color scheme out instead. So if you wanted to kind of change it out to make it look something different, you've got that flexibility. And back. Bluetooth options are available there. So as of right now, I'm not connected to a Bluetooth device, but if you were, you'd have options show up there. You can view your trip computer as well. So you can see what's going on with your current drive. Fuel economy is terrible because I'm just sitting here doing an explainer video. But if we look at our basic trip counters here, you can see so far, since I've picked this vehicle up, I've driven 68.2 kilometers, 14.4 liters per 100. Again, that's higher just because I'm sitting here right now and I'm getting brutal fuel economy. You can hit the menu icon in order to reset as well. Manually reset, again, we've seen these where you can have it reset when you turn the vehicle off, when you refuel the vehicle, etc. Or you can delete your trip history overall. USB, so if you had a USB stick that was connected, you'd have options show up. You can see if there are system updates that are available. Cabin talk picks up the microphone from the front and shoots it into the back as well. You can adjust your clock out. So you've got your clock face there, but you can also adjust out to a different clock face. So you can add more in. You can just have a basic digital clock instead, so a matter of preference. And back into your date and time, which we've already seen this one. So you'll see a few of these things duplicated, a few different spots. There is your compass view instead, so if you wanted to see which direction you're facing. Your display mode, so if you wanted to turn the display off, you could. You can adjust the screen brightness from here. And then you can see all the different apps that are available, and you can show or select whether or not they're visible on that home screen as well. So if you didn't want certain apps showing up, you could block them from showing up on the home screen here. If the screen's ever giving you problems, like let's say if you can't connect to Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, or it's giving you any sort of other problems, you can easily do a screen reboot too. In order to make it happen, just push and hold the home icon for about 5 to 10 seconds. There we go. And once that happens, you could either cancel, you can do a soft reboot, or reboot in safe mode. So if you've downloaded an app that's giving you problems, you can do a safe mode reboot, which is going to essentially disable all of the apps. But just a basic screen reboot here. So like I said, the typical time you're going to have to do that is that if the screen's giving you issues with connectivity options for your phone, if it's acting buggy, because think about it, this is a device. Think of it like a mini laptop or a tablet. If you've kept it on for too long without actually doing a reboot, it might be slow and sluggish. So doing a soft reboot here instead is a good way to essentially clear the cache out and then make sure that things are running properly. You've got dual zone, well, I guess technically tri-zone climate, because you've got something different for the driver passenger, control for the rear as well. I mentioned, so you've got heated and ventilated first row seats with massage chair seat capabilities for the driver's side seat and the passenger side seat in the first row. The shifter here is kind of neat. So you've got your park, reverse, neutral, drive with a sport mode too, because you've got your sport drive mode and then basic sport mode here as well. There's the auto start stop system. Brake hold is a neat one. So if you've got brake hold enabled, if you're in drive and you come down to a complete stop and you take your foot off the brake, the car is not going to move. There are some USB power points there. These ones are strictly charge ports. Volume rockers there, change between songs or stations with some cup holders and a wireless charge pad. The armrest here is multi-tiered. So you've got a teeny little storage tray along the very top, moving down into a good amount of storage down low with 2 different power points there. So there's also a USB Type C port that's for data and then one that's for charging. So if you wanted to use wired Android Auto or Apple CarPlay or a USB stick with MP3s, you plug yourself in that way instead. And I mean, having said that, so if we look there, listening to audio, you've got a series of different speaker choices that are available inside of this ride. So there's either an 11 speaker system, a 19 speaker system, or a 31 speaker Bang & Olufsen audio system instead. So if audio is your jam, you're going to want to be in one of the higher trim levels of the ride. But hold on, let's go through and let's listen to some music here. And the music that we're listening to, just coming out of the microphone right now. So there's no post-processing done in this whatsoever.
They want me to do something that can make sense. They hate when I keep dreaming I'll be famous. But I don't think they want me to settle. There's nobody on my level. I
mean, that was at partial volume. I gotta say the audio inside of this system is amazing. I haven't had the opportunity to be inside of the 19 speaker system, but honestly, like I think for the size of the cabin, even in the 19 speaker, you're probably going to be okay. But if you want the best quality audio, the 31 speaker system is definitely the way to go. It's wild. Now, as we move through, so up overhead, you can see there, you've got the auto dimming rear view mirror where you can turn that auto dimming function off. You've also got your SOS mode, just in case something happens, control all of your lights there. So if you want the lights to not come on when you open the door, turn all your lights on, off, individuals, etc. There's a sunglasses holder there too. And then there are controls for the sunshade and the sunroof. So you could hit tilt there in order to just create a little tilt, a little breeze. Pushing and holding is going to open it up most of the way. Secondary is going to open it up that last little bit, but that just opens things up. Oh, so nicely inside of this ride. I mean, look at that. It's funny, even with panoramic sunroofs, I tend not to actually drive with the roof open. The shade open, yes, but the roof open, not so much. But that's just nice. From there, you've got a little ticket receipt holder on the outside, vanity mirror with lights built in, and then this, oh yeah, extends out more than enough to block all of the sun. That might be hitting your face. But I mean, there is so much inside of this ride. I know that people weren't crazy about the last generation infotainment system, so this one, Google-based, so Android-based, is amazing in my experience so far. But, let's see here, let's make sure. There we go, I've got the seat set up for myself, being 6 feet tall there, so driver's seat memory 1. Right inside of the second row of the MDX, you've got some manual sunshades along the door, that same wood grain highlight with a speaker up high, down low, window controls with some storage, and then the seats inside of the ride. So you've got the same type of Napa leather seats, or it's going to be leather seats in most trims, depending on which trim level you've gone for. But with the driver's seat set up for myself being 6 feet tall, inside of the second row, I've got some knee space, foot space, and up overhead. It's tight. I've got maybe an inch and a half of headspace there, so not a ton of space, but just enough. Then one nice thing, so there's a lever along the side there you can use to fold the seat down, but you can also create a nice little recline for yourself too. Oh, that's good. If you don't care about the people in the third row, or if you're not using it, you can stow those seats if you want to, but oh, that's nice. The seats are also slidable, so if you need to create a little bit of extra space, you've got the flexibility to be able to do it. You've got pockets behind both the driver and the passenger side in the second row. And then from there, you've got a boatload of different climate control settings here. So you've got heated outboard seats as an option here, and that's strictly going to be for the outboard. So this middle seat is just never going to be heated inside of the ride. But you can control the climate from the back here as well, turn it on, off, adjust it to the face or feet, auto modes, adjusting your fan speed and things like that. You've got some basic vent controls there. A few different power points. You've got a 12 volt with 2 USB Type-C charge ports, and then, oh, they're just your style. Rubber trays in the back are useful. Up overhead there, you've got a handle, hook, and a light, and that's the same thing here. So there's a little light, handle, and a hook, and you can see a little speaker there as well. But overall, it's not the most spacious second row, but at the same time, I can fit back here. So could you fit 3 adults that are my size? I think so. The jump seat there is interesting. So like there's no hump in the floor, which is nice. But if I got stuck in the middle seat, it's actually not bad. It's tight. Like if the shade was closed right now, my head would be rubbing against the shade for sure, sitting upright. But if you've got kids, there are anchor points and tether points as necessary if you need them. And then one other neat thing about this middle seat, so you can fold it down individually if you want to, in order to show some cup holders and a teeny little bit of storage, which is nice. When it's down, it's actually locked down into place too. So you need to pull there in order to, have to back up. Oh, this is gonna be tough. Here, let's see if we can do it. Up, and there we go. And then one other neat thing is that there's a little tab here that you can pull in order to be able to fully remove the seat. So if you wanted to actually take this out to have a dual captain's chair set up instead with a pass through to the third row, you've got that available as an option. All right, and getting into the third row of the ride. So you'd use this tab in order to be able to fold the seat down, using this button in order to be able to power slide the seat instead. And hopping inside of the third row. Sanctuary! This is brutal. Okay, so like I said, I'm 6 feet tall. These seats are meant for kids, for sure, or if you're in an absolute bind and you need to transport more people. I don't know how you're gonna make it work though. Like, unless you've got kids, shorter family members, or people you just don't like, and you can stick them back here. But it is extremely cramped inside of this ride. Oh, like uncomfortably cramped. Like I'm not sitting upright. There's zero chance. And like looking at knee space and foot space. I got to do it. It's part of it. Ugh. Okay. So, I mean, I can fit back here kind of like a little bit. Not really. I wouldn't, like, there's 0% chance, like, it's not safe for me to sit in the third row, but I'm also taller. Hold on, let's push that button there. Along the side, you've got a cup holder, along with another power point. There are USB power points everywhere, which is kind of nice. It's the same thing along the passenger side, and you can see speakers just all over the place. There's a light control up overhead there too. So this seat you can fully remove if you want to, but if you've got people that are taller, like there's a 0% chance that they're fitting in the third row, you're gonna have to look at another vehicle instead, like another model in order to get that option. But it's got 7 seats if you really need them. So you're always gonna have 2 in the front, 2 or an optional third in the middle if you remove this thing, and then the 2 seats in the back. But like I said, it's not comfortable by any stretch in the third row of this ride. Ooh, getting out. Oh. Oh my God. The rear end of the MDX looks pretty sharp. The lamps have nice black bezels that trace all the way throughout, and then there are some nice black gloss highlights on the bumper as well. Your quad tip exhaust on top of that inside of this version of the ride. Tech-wise back here, you're always going to find the reverse park sensing system, backup camera, and the rear wiper as well. Towing inside of the MDX is also possible, and the overall capacity is going to depend on which option you've chosen. So you're 3,500 pounds if you do something aftermarket or choose that option from the factory. And then if you go for the factory option for 5,000 pounds, that's going to come with a transmission oil cooler as well. So if you want the best possible capacity, go for the option from the factory with that 5K option. But overall, that is pretty solid. Getting into the trunk of the MDX can be done a few different ways. There's a button just to the left-hand side on the driver's door. You can use the key fob to do it. Just underneath the Acura badge, there's a button there that you can also push. And then there's the option for a foot-activated liftgate. So as long as the key fob's on you, all you're gonna do is swipe your foot underneath. The only downside is that if the sensors are covered in snow, ice, mud, etc., it's not going to work. But as you saw, there are so many other ways to get into the trunk of this ride. And then you've got this. So there is an okay amount of space inside of just the cargo area by itself. But realistically, you do have the option of folding down the third row seats easily if you need to. This one has an available multi-fold cargo cover, which is incredibly useful because if you've got those third row seats up, you can just kind of push them back and then it just sits perfectly. And then if you've got the third row seats folded down, it extends out nicely as well. So let's just pull this out. Off to the left-hand side, you're going to find access in order to get to the battery. There's a 12-volt power point there. And then there's also a button for walk away for the actual lift gate. So if you've got that button enabled, you can walk away and then the vehicle is automatically going to shut the lift gate for you. It's a pretty cool feature. Then you've got a little storage tray here lifting up. There's a decent amount of space. Now, one thing you're not going to find inside of this ride is a mini spare tire, but what you will find are releases in order to get to, there we go, the little inflator kits. There's the goop along with an air compressor. So if you ever puncture a tire, you might luck out and you might just be able to seal it. But one of the nice things about being an Acura owner is that you do have access to roadside assistance. So if you pop a tire, puncture a tire, lock out, need fuel delivery, winching services, and so many other things, that is available. 4 years of coverage, 50,000 miles in the States, unlimited in Canada. So that's one thing to consider is that, like I said, no spare tire here. You might be able to do something aftermarket, but it's fairly limited space down here. So that's something that you need to consider. Folding down the seats inside of the ride is straightforward. So you're going to be manual seats for the third row. So there's a release there that you're going to grab and push. You can do the same. Driver passenger side, and it is a very flat fold there. Then folding down the second row seats has to be done from the inside. All you're going to do, walk around, and there's a lever along the side you're going to pull in order to drop that seat down. And when you have it folded down, it's a fairly flat fold, And you also have a great amount of space inside of this car. Looking at the measurements for the vehicle, so the ones just in behind the first row are going from right where that liftgate would close to just in behind the little armrest between the first row seats. So if the driver's seat, passenger seat were forwards, backwards a little bit, you'd lose or gain a little bit of extra space. The seats in the second row can be slid forwards or backwards on the outboard. The middle seat can be folded flat. But one cool thing is that there's also the option of just completely removing the seat. So there's a tabble on the very bottom of the seat in order to fully remove the seat from the vehicle. So if you're looking for a 6-seat configuration or you just need a little bit more space inside, that is available as an option. And raising the third row seats and the second row seats, it's going to be a manual process. Third row, all you're going to do is lift and up for the headrest, up and up again, and you're set to go. And that was everything you needed to know about the Acura MDX. You can find all of the build details for this ride down in the description, along with links off to Acura Canada and US. But if you found this video useful, give it a thumbs up, share it with someone if you think they might find it helpful. And until I see you next time, take care.